If I said to you, this is a, calculating, pragmatic person, you'd say, you must have been smoking something because isn't it wild and unpredictable and irrational and crazy. And actually, yeah, a lot of the language is like that. But in terms of much of what he's doing, there's a pretty cold, calculating pragmatism about it.
We're now almost 6 months into Donald Trump's second term. How have his decisions affected the support from his MAGA base? Well, there's been plenty of reporting on this. We know that some of his decisions they've not been a fan of at all, notably the strike on Iran and any involvement in war and conflict. In his column for tomorrow's Times, Gerry Baker, who's the Wall Street Journal's editor-at-large and Times columnist, and of course a regular panellist on this show, says that from bombing Iran to bursting the Epstein conspiracy, Trump may have harmed his position with his core voters. What does that tell us about him? Gerry joins me now. Gerry, good evening.
Hello, Kate. Thanks for having me.
There's no doubt about it that Donald Trump has veered away in his decision-making from his MAGA base.
Yes, in some respects. Look, he's doing the stuff that they care most about. He's cutting back immigration, more or less, essentially completely stopped all illegal immigration into the country and is deporting many, many people. He's doing a lot of the cultural stuff that they like, pushing back on the kind of woke stuff, abolishing DEI in government departments and things like that. But it's also true that he's not following the MAGA script on some of those other issues, the ones you just mentioned, the ones I talk about in my column today, the foreign policy side. There were a lot of people very unhappy with the decision to bomb Iran, which they see as getting America into, potentially costly and unending wars. They don't like his apparent sort of chumminess now with the rest of NATO, which we saw at the NATO summit last month. Now that he's got the NATO countries to spend a bit more, they don't like cozying up to Europe like that. They don't like the fact that he seems to have suddenly sort of turned tail on Vladimir Putin and embraced much more enthusiastically Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine. He's now, again, as I talk about in my column, not only has he reinstated these weapons that were kind of slightly mysteriously halted, that were being transferred to Ukraine last week, but he's actually, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that he's actually thinking now quite seriously about providing new weapons to Ukraine. This will be the first done all that. So look, on all of these issues, again, I don't want to overstate the extent to which he's got a problem. As I've said, and I've said to you this before, Kate, Donald Trump is MAGA and MAGA is Donald Trump. So whatever he decides to do, most police supporters will go along with him. The point I make in the column, however, is that there's a lot more pragmatism to Donald Trump than people sort of think. If I said to you, this is a, calculating, pragmatic person, you'd say, you must have been smoking something because isn't wild and unpredictable and irrational and crazy. And actually, yeah, a lot of the language is like that. But in terms of much of what he's doing, there's a pretty cold, calculating pragmatism about it.
Is it pragmatism, or is this really what Donald Trump thought all along? But in order to get across the line, he needed to appeal to his MAGA base, and he understands very clearly what his MAGA base stand for.
No, I think Trump is genuinely an independent character. That is, he makes his own decisions on where he's going to go. And he has this astonishing cult-like. There's no question that for a lot of the MAGA supporters, there's a kind of personality cult quality to it. And, I don't doubt that how Donald Trump became as successful as he was is primarily because of widespread dissatisfaction, particularly on the right, but even across the spectrum with the existing political parties, the political establishment, which had got America into these long, costly wars, which had presided over, relatively poor economic performance, which had allowed this kind of woke cultural hegemony to take hold. Those were the factors that no doubt Donald Trump was able to tap into, and he did articulate. But once he came on the scene, he kind of made his own. He made it up as he went along. Don't forget either, and it's something else I point out in the column, 15, just before Trump came on the scene 10 years ago, Trump was not seen as a Republican conservative. He hung around with the Clintons. He was kind of pro-choice on abortion. He was not notably in favor of the kind of conservative positions. The religious conservatives who now revere him probably, frankly, would have regarded things like hanging out with a porn star and stuff like that as not exactly the kind of things they liked. So he has been able to again, by primarily tapping into those concerns that people have, but then being able to use his own kind of personality cult, he's been able more or less to do pretty much what he likes. And as I said, MAGA now largely goes with him, whatever he chooses to do.
So he was genuine in his appeal to MAGA, anti-political establishment, anti-immigration. All of that was genuine. It's just that now he's in office. He's learned that he has to pivot a bit to give a broader appeal, to seem like not such an outlier, to get on better with other nations, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly, Kate. Everybody who's in government, however committed they may be to an ideology, to a set of ideas and principles, they all, if they're to be successful, they have to compromise with reality. Liz Truss springs to mind there, for example, and the reason she only lasted 49 days. Donald Trump has been making the weather in all kinds of ways. And again, just to repeat, on immigration, on some of this cultural stuff, he's just got a huge tax and spending bill passed through Congress just last week. He's getting his way on most of these issues, but he is also critically on issues like foreign policy, like Iran, like NATO, like Russia, Ukraine, on some of the domestic stuff. We talked about immigration, Kate. Again, as I point out in the column, quite remarkably, he has basically said, he's agreed to businesses who are pushing very hard not to deport illegal immigrants who work in critical industries like agriculture and the hospitality sector, because millions of illegal immigrants work in those places, and if they were all deported, those places would come.
So he sort of changed his mind. I mean, if he was a UK politician, we'd be describing U-turns all over the place. And then there's this tag, isn't there, of taco Trump? Trump always chickens out, taco, and whether the tariffs, which have been constantly delayed, the threat to stop all illegal migration, anyone coming into the country, and then flipping from that, sort of whether he will become too flip-flop, whether his U-turns will actually start to cause concern, or whether it's just a sign of being agile.
No question on many of those issues. He has already, again, U-turn might be too strong, but certainly a subtle course correction, shall we say, on some of those issues. Tariffs is the most interesting one, Kate, I think, because that is the one where he's still, I think, without any question, he is passionately, personally committed to the idea of tariffs. He loves tariffs. He was at it again yesterday, saying he's going to hit Brazil with a 50% tariff because he doesn't like the way they treated the former president, Bolsonaro. But even there, Kate, and this is important, although you're right, there is the taco idea is true. Trump always chickens out to some extent. He's backed off the most extreme version of the tariffs that he announced on April the 2nd. But he's maintained huge numbers of tariffs in place. Something like the average tariff rate that Americans are now paying on imports is about 15%. Before he took office, it was 3%. And it's bad. 15% is the highest level it's been since the 1930s. So he has already achieved a significant increase in tariffs, which is what he wanted to do. And by the way, that has resulted in significant government revenue too. It hasn't yet had the devastating effect that a lot of people thought it would on the economy. And I say as yet, because it's still early days, there could still be trouble. But even there, so I think, so he's been able to get his way for the most part on tariffs, but he's backed off again, showing a kind of a willingness to be pragmatic. He's backed off the more extreme version. Now, we'll see. He's given countries another few weeks until August the 1st to come up with plans to see whether he goes any further. But again, even his tariff policy, I think, can be captured quite well as this kind of exercise in pragmatism, going part of the way to where he wants to go, but understanding that going too far could actually be damaging. So doing just enough to enable him to say he's won without causing too much damage to the economy.
Jerry, really interesting. Thank you for giving us a preview of your piece in tomorrow's paper. I'm sure it will garner a lot of comment. There's a lot to consider there. Varying opinions. Jerry Baker, Wall Street Journal's editor-at-large, Times columnist, and you can read Jerry's column online a little bit later on and, of course, in tomorrow's paper. Cheers, Jerry.